multi-ethnic. That means you have people from different ethnic groups. If they have to deal with the issue of music, you will find out that although they are part of the same country, because there is that dividing line, which is ethnicity, there are issues when it comes to music. We can go further and say you can have people from the same household, same ethnic background, but if they have to be together in one place, you can also have issues with music based on the fact that they are from different generations.
Yes.
And the list could go on. But what we can see and we can say is that people, one of the main reasons for divisions when it comes to music, and again, I'm saying this is very important to keep in mind in this discussion. When it comes to music, people react differently to different things because people like different things. Now, we notice that it is all based on taste, very often based on taste and preferences that are motivated or comes out of, if you like, of social, cultural, religious, and other parameters. Are you with me? So very important to notice that to begin with, this is not just a church thing. And there are various reasons why we experience divisions when it comes to that. This is vital for us to recognize at the start. So basically, to summarize all of that, I would say people are divided on music issues even before they can get to church. And that is important. If we're going to talk about divisions within the Christian context.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. I've liked how you had the different perspectives, such as the social, the cultural, the religious, and other parameters that you didn't bring in, but you may draw them in later on in the study. And I like when you said it's not just a church thing. So, Pedro, is it music that's a problem, or is it people? Which came first?
This is a very important question, and I think it takes into consideration what we have just said. Now, you trying to expand our minds and having us reflect on, okay, is it a question of music or is it a question of who I am? I guess that's what you are trying to say. Now, if you ask the question to, let's say, a musicologist, people who study music and the effects of music and the different types of musics in the different parts of the world, they are musicologists. If you ask them, what is the origin of music? Where does music come from? What do you think their answers are likely to be?
Varied, given their social, cultural, religious, and other issues that may come into it.
Yeah, maybe they might believe that how we approach music or the kind of music we have is due to how we've evolved.
Okay, but if you ask these people, where do you think the concept of music comes from? The likelihood, those are musicologists, right? They study these things. The likelihood is, I mean, if you ask them who invented it, the likelihood is we don't know. We don't know who
That's
invented music. That's
Yes.
that's the likely answer that you will have. However, if you take it from a biblical perspective and you ask the same question,
yeah,
you will come up with a much um, a much certain, if you like, or beneficial answer to this. And this is where what I want to do with you in trying to answer your question: is it music the problem, or is it people? I'd like you to go first for me to the book of Job in chapter 38 and read for me two verses there, verse 4 and verse 7, please.
where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. When the morning stars sang together, all the sons of God shouted for joy. That's Revised Standard Version. The New English Translation says, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you possess understanding. When the morning stars sang in chorus and all the sons of God shouted for joy.
All right. You may not think anything about these two texts here, these two verses here, but they give great insight into the question that was asked in terms of is it people or is it music, and who
Mm,
invented music. The context of this is God speaking to Job, and he's speaking to Job about the creation of the universe.
yeah.
You notice in this text that there is music in this text. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And this is before man was created. That's why God is asking Job, where were you
Mm.
when the plans went into execution in terms of hanging the earth on nothing, as well as the sun and the stars? Where were you? If we read the 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 account of creation in Genesis chapter 1, we know that all of these things happened long before Job was around. In fact, long before there was a man.
Yes.
And the
That is
important thing
true.
here is we hear about music,
Mm-hmm.
people singing.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to read another text for me, which is in Psalm 100 and verse 2. Verse 1 and 2, please. Verses 1 and 2.
Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. And that's from the Revised Standard Version.
Okay. So I'd like to point to your attention that the words also here, make a joyful noise unto the Lord
Mm-hmm.
and serve the Lord with gladness, come into his presence with singing. The two words that we found in the preceding text about the 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 sons of God who shouted for joy and who sung, these two words are repeated in this text that you have on the screen right now in terms of the original language. The very same two words. But this time, we're talking about human beings. It's
Mm.
the psalmist saying, this is what you should do to the Lord. So, what do we see here? We see that when it comes to music, when it comes to singing, human beings learned from celestial beings.
Absolutely.
That means what we're doing down here in terms of music is what had been happening before we were here. All
Yes.
right? Now, so we can clearly say man did not invent music. We can say that to the musicologist. Doesn't matter how
Yes.
far
Yeah.
back you go in the history of this world, man did not create music. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because when my mother was alive, she said to me in Zephaniah 3:17 that God rejoices over us with singing. And I was like, you're absolutely right, Pedro, because God is the originator of music. If he can actually sing over those whom he loves, it means that God is the originator of this, where the musicologists say, we don't know. We know as spiritual Christians that it's God that invented singing because he invented everything. So yeah, it was that Zephaniah 3:17.
Yeah. And
That's good.
also, just to add to that, if we know the origin of music, which we've just identified, then if we can identify what that music is and what that music looks like, then we'll have a better understanding of where we should be in relation to music.
That is absolutely correct. And this is what we're trying to do. Because you know the issue of music is a big issue in Christianity, in
Yes.
churches. We all have heard that. Now, still on that track, I want you to read another text for me, which is found now this time in the New Testament in Luke chapter 2, verse 13, please.
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, peace, goodwill toward men. Mm.
So what we see here is an angelic choir. I think some groups have that name, angelic choir. But what we
All
see
right.
here is the real thing. We see an angelic choir. But now we just said that when it comes to the origin of music, we see from what we've already said that man or man, human beings, have learned
Yeah,
from celestial beings. And right
that's right.
there, we can see a host of celestial beings engaging in singing and music, right? Now, the Bible, by the way, that the context of that is the birth of Jesus 2,000 years
Yeah.
ago. And at that time, men are well trained already in all kinds of musics. Now, there is a lot of what we just read in Luke 2:13. There is a lot of that happening in the last book of the Bible, which is the book of
Revelation.
Revelation.
Revelation. A lot of that happening. Can you read for me? Just one or two texts. Three actually. Revelation 5 verses 11 and 12, please.
Okay. All of whom were singing in a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb who was killed to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and praise. That's the NET and the New Living Translation. And they sang in a mighty chorus, worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing.
What do you think is happening here? Do you think this is a kind of a worship service? A praise
Yeah,
time?
yes, it
Yes,
Yes.
is.
absolutely. This is what is happening, and that is happening before the throne of God. And this is
Yeah.
within the context of adoration. That's why The text I'm going to ask you to read now, still in this same chapter, is a dynamic translation of verse 12, which is Revelation 5, verse 12, but in the NLT version.
Okay. All of whom were singing in a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb," tell a lie, wrong one, and they sing a new
No.
song.
You had the right one. You had the right one. Come back to it.
Okay, I thought it was the right
We
one.
need Revelation 5, verse 12 in those two dynamic translations.
Okay.
Just come back to it.
So it's right.
Yeah,
So it's
just come back
Revelation.
to Revelation 5, verse 12, as we had it on the screen in the NET and NLT. That's right.
Okay. All of whom were singing in a loud voice, "Worthy is the Lamb who was killed to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and praise." And they sang in a mighty chorus, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing."
The reason why I have it in those two dynamic translations, or more dynamic than the RSV we had previously, is that here, when I asked you the question, when we read the RSV verse 12, I asked you, what do you think they were doing? Because the text doesn't say that they were singing. The text says they were saying. But in the
Yeah.
spirit of the text, that those two translations here are telling you, as if you were there, look at what is happening. In the first one, they are singing with a loud voice. They are not just saying, they are singing. It's melodious. That's what the NET is saying. And the NLT is even more dynamic, and I guess it has in mind what we saw in Luke 2:13, an angelic choir. That's why it says, and they sung in a mighty chorus, "Worthy is the Lamb," and so on and so forth. So we can see that a lot of that is happening in heaven. Now, we can continue with Revelation 14, verse 3 now. Revelation 14, verse 3. That's,
14:3.
yeah.
Okay, and they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth.
This is now, in Revelation 14, verse 3, a different group of people from a different place. And in this particular group, this particular group can be identified as the redeemed from the earth. So those are human beings, and they also stand before the throne of God. But what are they doing?
They're singing.
They are singing a new song. So this also is a worship service. This is a worship time. What is interesting here? Do you know this is the New Testament? So the original language is the Greek. I told you a few minutes ago in Revelation 5, 11, and 12, the context is a context of adoration, right? Would you think
Yes.
that this is the same context of adoration?
Yes.
Okay, different
Of
event,
course.
different people, maybe different place, but same context of adoration. Do you know what the original word for they were singing is? What the word in Greek is? Probably
No.
not.
No.
I'm glad to tell you. that the word, when it says they were singing, the verb is ado,
Oh,
from which you have the word adoration.
adoration. Oh,
That's why you can move from language to language to language in Europe, and you will have the same word, adoration. You with me?
Mhm.
So it
yeah.
establishes clearly now something beyond what we have said so far. We have said so far that it originates in the celestial spheres. Music originate in the celestial sphere. Human
Sphere.
beings learn from that.
Hmm.
So your question was, is it music the problem or is it people? In the light of that, we can clearly see that music is not the problem. The concept of music is not the problem. Why? Because music was there before we got here. We can
True.
see from what we've just seen that music is very present around God. We can see from what we've just read that music has a noble role in God's creation, whether above or below. So
Wonderful.
music cannot be the problem, to answer your question.
Okay. Thank you. So,
Um,
people, we are the problem. Colleen, you got any
yes,
comments or anything coming through?
um, before you go to your
Okay.
next question, I've just got a few comments. There's a comment here from Jared, and it said, Satan has stolen the worship which belongs to God. And there's another comment from Purple Light Touch Foundation, and it says, Satan was a music director and he could sing. So those are just some of our comments that's coming in from those reviewing today.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is wonderful. So Pedro, it's interesting how you've said that people are the problem, but what is the role of music and why has it become so divisive? If God created this
Okay, so
wonderful
I will
thing called
just I will
music.
just yes, I will just correct something here, and that
Okay.
is, I haven't said that people are the problem. I said music is not the problem. But I understand what you're saying. If music is not the problem, then because your question was it music or was it people? But I just want to say for the record, I haven't said that
I
people
know,
are the
I know,
problem. Okay?
I know.
That's important in
It's
the
people,
in the
it's
development.
people making it's people making music that is the issue.
We'll see where the issue is. But to answer this present question that you have, what's the role of music? From what we see so far, we can see that music and singing has a noble role, as I said earlier, and its role, the role of music, is to commune and communicate with God in expressing gratitude, in expressing joy. Because you remember the choir um,
Yeah,
in
Yeah.
in at the birth of Jesus. You remember
Yes.
the celestial beings before the throne of God. Worthy, worthy is the Lamb. And you remember the group of people whom we call the 144,000. We've seen all of that. So the
Yes.
role of music seems to be to commune, a very important, the role of music. We cannot define it because we did not invent it. We can only
That's right.
take it from the person who invented it. That's why
yeah,
I'm insisting in saying the role of music, from what we see for the first time in Job 38, 4 and 7, is to commune and communicate with God by expressing thoughts of joy and gratitude to
Yes.
Him.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's what we consistently get from what we've seen. Now, I want you to read another text for me, which is Isaiah 65, verse 14, please.
Behold, my servants shall sing for joy of heart, but ye shall cry for sorrow of heart, and shall howl for vexation of spirit. And that's a King James Version. Look, my servants will shout for joy as happiness fills their hearts, but you will cry out as sorrow fills your hearts. You will wail because your spirits will be crushed. That's a New English translation.
I want you to look at this text and reflect on it for a few seconds and observe what is right there. Isaiah lived in the 8th century BC, about 800 years, about 800 years before Christ. So that would be 2,800 years from our time. And look at what he is saying in this text. Music is sound and thought bound together to carry our emotions in a certain direction. Music is sound and thought bound together to carry our emotions in a certain direction, and that can be with or without words. Now, notice in this text that there are two types of emotions. Can you see it in there? Can you tell me what they are? Two types of
Joy,
emotions.
yeah, there's joy and sorrow.
Sorrow.
Exactly. Two types of emotions. And we could say one is positive and the other one is negative. But here is a very important point. Those emotions are both carried by music.
Yes,
Both carried
true.
by music. Okay? So
Yes.
through sound. Now I want you to read again for me Revelation 14, verse 3. We had it a few minutes ago. Read it for me again, please.
Okay, from the Revised Standard Version. And they sang a new song before the throne, and before the four living creatures, and before the elders. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth.
Keep this text there. Let me ask you a question as you reflect on it. Why do you think nobody except them can sing this song? The text
Because
says
it's
no one could learn that song. That's powerful. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. You tell me, why do you think no one else except them can learn and sing this song?
Because they have a
from what I
specific
can
experience.
see.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Colleen was saying something.
Yeah, I was saying it's because they've had a specific experience.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
also, and also the song that they are learning is song as it's music that is purely heavenly and not been tainted by anything on earth, because it says a new sing a new song before the throne, which means if it's before the throne of God, the atmosphere is so pure that this song is only for those who have the mindset of Christ, and only they can sing that song because it's not tainted by sin.
This is absolutely true. But I want to point to your attention the fact that if you look at this text carefully, it has the exact same traits of all the texts that we have read so far when we spoke about the role of music, the origin of music, and what it is supposed to be. But now, what I will add to this is that music links the spiritual and the physical realm in which we operate. If you talk about music from the biblical perspective, music, very important, links the spiritual and the physical realm within which we operate. This is the original design. This is why you have the sons of God in Job 8, 38, 4 and 7 singing when God does what he does. This is why you have the groups of people, the elders and the creatures in Revelation 5, 11 and 12 doing what they do. This is why you have now Revelation 14 verse 3. These people, they sing a song that nobody else can sing, because music in its design is there to link the spiritual and the physical realm within which the creation of God operates. This is before sin. This is the design before sin.
Yes.
And after sin, this simple but complex concept became complicated. It kept the principle, but it became more complicated. That's why I want you now to go to another text, which is Genesis chapter 4 and verse 5, and read that for me, please.
But unto Cain and to his offering he had no respect, and Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. The New English Translation, but with Cain and his offspring he was not pleased. So Cain became very angry, and his expression was downcast. The New Living Translation, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected.
And you may ask me, what has that got to do with anything that we're talking about? Well, just hang in there. Read for me, please, verse 16 now of the same chapter, Genesis 4. Read verse 16 for me, please.
And Cain went forth, and Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden.
According to the Bible, Cain is the first open enemy of God in the human family. I'm not saying he's the first one to sin. I'm saying, according to the Bible, Cain is the first open enemy of God in the human family. Right?
Yes.
Now read for me, and we're still talking about music. We're still talking about music and what it is designed for. We're still talking about music and how, where it came from and what it is supposed to do. Can you read for me in 1 John chapter 3, verse 12? What is there, please?
We must not be like Cain, who belonged to the evil one and killed his brother. And why did he kill him? Because Cain had been doing what was evil, and his brother had been doing what was righteous.
Okay. Cain is of the evil one. What that means is, in his mind, he is completely given to the enemy of God. And that has made him an enemy, right?
Yeah.
He is completely out there with the enemy of God. Now, if you go back, or you read again for me, Genesis chapter 4, verse 16, please.
And Cain
And
went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod.
Okay, there
On
is
the
a text
east of
that,
Eden.
yeah, thank you. There is, so we're clear about the mindset of this guy called Cain. Now, I'm going to ask Simon to do something for me. Go to the text of, I believe it's around verse 22 or 23 of the same chapter that speaks about the two great grandsons of Cain. When you find them, you will put the text there for me. But what we can see already is music carries the emotions and the thoughts of people. All right?
Yeah.
Music is designed to commune and communicate with God, to express joy and gratitude. Now, who are the first human beings that are on record in the Bible to have been into the music industry? Do you know who they are?
Yeah, was it Tubal Khan and
That's the
just
text I want Simon to put there for me. Thank
yeah,
you.
Jubal and Tubal
And you
Khan.
can read that for me, please.
And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ.
You see, these are the children of Cain. And we
Yeah.
know from the biblical records that they lived a separate life from those who served God. So you have a whole rebellious line of people living together. And in that line of people, what do we discover? We discover that the first human beings who went into the music industry are
Yes.
these people.
Yes.
So
So
now,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, no, carry on. You said so. I want to
So
carry
yeah,
on. I want to get a thought.
so now I'm just curious. I'm just wondering, knowing how music works, knowing that music carries emotions and thoughts, knowing that music expresses gratitude and joy originally, because that's what God designed it to be. I just wonder what kind of thoughts and emotions the music of these people who were of a rebellious line, and the Bible says their minds were given over to the devil. I just wonder what kind of thoughts and emotions their music was carrying and how it
Okay.
connected to God. They are the first people, Simon, in the music industry. They
Okay.
created, they created Simon the organ.
Which Simon loves to play. Yes.
So I'm just wondering in terms of adoration. You know the word adore? I'm just
Means
wondering,
adult. Yeah.
how did that connect with God in that rebellious line with adoration? Are you with
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So here we begin to see a little light in this whole music business in terms of where we are now. Yes, Colleen.
yes. In light of the point you've just brought up, I've just got a few comments that I wanted to read quickly. One of the comments. It says, okay, it says Satan knows how to put music together to stimulate our carnal side and develop an ungodly nature in us. Not all music is wholesome, which is what I think that you're alluding to. But there's also a comment from Jared, and it said Satan has created rock music and hip hop and metal. So I thought that was quite interesting. I'm not sure if there's a particular genre of music that we can say was created by Satan. And then there's another comment which I think is very interesting, and it says, even some so-called, this is from Ruti G, it says, even some so-called Christian music is not arranged like Christian music because it stimulates desires that are not worship to God, but to emotions. So some very
True.
interesting points there, Pedro, in regards to different types of music and different types of Christian music as well, that I'm hoping that we'll go on to address.
So
Absolutely.
Pedro,
And just before you ask your next question, I just want to say,
yeah,
you see how we're trying to deal with that. What you have just said is part of the discussion that has always been going on. But
Yes.
what we're trying to do is to understand why and how we get to those points. Are you
Mm.
with me? And
Yeah.
so far in the Bible, we don't hear about Satan making music. We hear about people. We hear about, but we hear, and that's where the point is. The person who talked about Satan and so on and so forth. The text we read in 1 John 3:12 is putting him in the picture,
yeah,
Mm.
but in a particular way we need to understand. Because
mm,
we've already said music carries emotions and thoughts from the mind. So we're going somewhere with that, and we see if music instruments, the invention of music instruments and the music industry comes through the rebellious line of Cain,
mm,
we just need to think about the dispositions of the mind within that context at a
mm.
natural level for
Yes.
us today. That's what I'm saying in terms of principle. So you can go on with your next question because time is
Yeah,
running.
that's really good because I mean the viewers were actually, demarcating godly music from the carnal Canaanite-ish, if you can say that, the Canaanite music, um, which is perplexing because are you saying the music we have now is from the devil?
Mm.
What I'm saying is this is a good question. But just think. We read verse 100 and that's right on earth 1 and 2 make a joyful noise unto the Lord all ye land and so on, and we will come back to this. But we also read that those who went first into the music industry, as recorded in the Bible, their thoughts
Yeah.
were not godly, to the
Yes.
point that God had to eradicate them. So what I'm saying is music as we know it today and experience it in as human beings proceeds out of a corrupt heart and corrupt thoughts. And we've already seen that music connects the spiritual sphere to the physical sphere.
Mm.
And this is what we need to grapple with in the
Yes.
larger picture before
Yeah.
we go into um, categorizing music as this type and that other type, which is a good thing that we need to do. We
Mm.
first need to establish that music proceeds out of a corrupt mind
Mm.
and carries corrupt emotions
Mm.
at a natural level, because that's what we see. in the Bible. Now, I want you to go back again and to read for me Genesis chapter 4, verse 5 for the third time.
Colleen?
But unto Cain and to his offsprings he had no respect, and Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. That's the King James Version. But with Cain and his offering he was not pleased. So Cain became very angry, and his expression was downcast. That's the NET. But he did not accept Cain and his gifts. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected.
Dejected. Okay. Now, let me ask you this question. Would that's Cain's offering, right? That God has rejected. Let me ask you this question. Would Cain's music be more acceptable to God than his fruits and veg?
No.
No.
Why
Because of
not?
where his heart was. Because of where his heart was with God.
Bang on. This is what
Mm.
we need to grapple with. It did
Yeah.
not matter how skillful Cain would have been in playing the organ, the saxophone, the guitar, or the drum. The fruits and the veg had nothing wrong with them. This is another debate. All right?
Yes.
But God rejected it because of the place it came from,
Yes.
That's right.
the thoughts and the emotions. And for that very reason, Cain's music would have also been rejected by God.
Yeah.
So when we talk about ungodly music, this is what we need to think about.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, there is this genre and that genre and that type and this other type here. But the first thing we need to deal with is the place it comes from.
Yes.
That makes it godly or ungodly. Not maybe for me,
Yeah.
but for God. This is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more comments, Colleen?
Yes, there is a comment, and it says exactly. This comes from Jared. It says exactly, Ruti G. They have made Christian music to be like the world. So again, that's another point that we potentially have to think about. And it says here, Christian music is supposed to be separated from the world. So I'm not sure how we tie that idea in regards to separate from the world, relating to what we've just discussed.
Yeah.
I think we just need to think about what we've just said,
Yeah.
because the usual debate that we have is this type and that other type. Well, the problem is deeper than this, and this is what we're trying to say.
Mm.
It is part of it,
Okay.
but it's deeper. But
Yes.
we will come back to this, I'm sure.
Yes, we need. I think we need to go more deeper into that because people will get confused. I think because it's of church, it's of God, and because it's not of church, it's of the devil. But let's see, shall we? So, so given the fact that you mentioned Tubal Khan and you made the harp and the organ, are there any musical instruments that is of the devil?
That's an excellent question,
Well,
Ruth.
yeah, because I've seen that in my days. People saying this instrument is of the devil and that instrument is of the devil. Well, I don't know about that, but I can tell
Okay.
you what I see in the Bible. Could you go for me? We have 6 minutes for that, and that's an interesting question. Can you go for me to 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 5, please?
Colleen?
Meanwhile, David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with all kinds of instruments. made of juniper wood and with lyres, harps, tambourine, castanets, and cymbals.
Mm.
Okay, what's wrong with this text?
It's
I'll tell you.
interesting, right?
I'll tell
Nothing.
you.
Go on
Yes,
then.
go ahead if you have something.
No, I'm just saying, right? These are all kind of instruments that were used to give praise and adoration to God. It mentions harps. It mentions, lyres and juniper wood and castanets and cymbals and tambourines. But it's the mindset that is played that is what's important. Well, to me anyway, it's what the mind is doing with these instruments. Is it for good or for evil?
This is deep, but let me stay at a more surface level here.
All right.
You see all these instruments, you're perfectly
Mm-hmm.
right, and this is in essence what we have developed so far.
Mm-hmm.
But you see all these instruments that you see here,
Yeah.
these are the very same instruments. Guess who
Mm-hmm.
invented them?
Tubal and Cain's offspring.
This is perfectly right. Those instruments, they may have different words here for them, but in the original, and you can go through a series of texts, the same instruments that are identified in Genesis 4:21 are the same instruments all the way through that the
Okay.
people are using to praise God. So your question is, are there also musical instruments of the devil?
Hmm. Yes.
Right? Let me ask you this question. Who invented the piano?
Says Jubal.
I mean, the piano the way we know it,
Man.
because those instruments also evolve, right? They
Yeah.
have a
Man.
basic ancestor, and then they evolve.
Mm.
So who invented the piano? I'm just making a
Man.
point here.
I'm saying it was man that
Yeah, it
created
must be a
it.
man. But the
Yeah.
Yes.
question, the answer is we don't know. I mean, I know who they say did it, right?
Okay.
But the point I want to make is, um, quite frankly, who cares about who invented the piano? What Christian will ask this question before getting on the piano and play in church?
Not
No
one
one.
that I know of.
No.
You see, this is what we need to grapple with.
Mm.
We are dealing with an issue that has a principle to it. But what we do is, instead of dealing with the principle, we deal with different aspects of how it materializes. And we leave behind the principle, the underlying principle. I come back to the question of um, what music is designed for.
Mm.
Music is a divine invention. When
Mm.
it comes to it, human beings are only doing what celestial beings were doing
Yeah.
Yeah.
first, right?
Mm.
We see that music is heavily involved in the reign of God.
Mm.
But then we learn that there are musics in principle that would be unacceptable to God,
Mm. Yeah.
and those who would be acceptable. The difference is made on how it functions. That means what it carries, what the music carries in terms
Mm.
of thoughts, and emotions rather than beats. Maybe we haven't dealt with that. And the proof of that is there was nothing wrong with the vegetables and the fruits, yet God rejected the fruits and the vegetables. Why? Because the heart and the mind and the emotions were in the wrong place to begin with. You can argue he was not supposed to give that type of offering, but eventually, the reason why it was rejected in the first place, even if you go for what type of offering he was supposed to give, is because his mind and his heart was in the wrong place. So his music, even if he had the right instruments, would have been rejected in the same way as his offering. Mindset.
Wonderful, wonderful. I don't know if we're going to have a part
No.
two, but we've got some questions for next time. So, a question would be: are there music Christians should listen to or not listen to at all? And does the Bible give any advice on music that is relevant for today? So those questions will be asked next week. Okay.
Definitely, we will have this Q&A, and there are already two other questions that we will deal with because this is a very important topic. I just
Yes.
gave a principle on which next time we will build to have a comprehensive understanding of music and what is expected of us in that field.
Wonderful. So until next time, remember to look back at the text that we spoke about today from the biblical perspective because it's such a big issue because everywhere you go, there's music and we want to get it right, not for ourselves, not for our families, our co-workers, our colleagues or our social circles. We want to get it right for God because he is the originator of music. Go back and look at Zephaniah 3:17, look back at all the texts and share this video with one person who might be interested in the topic of music from the biblical perspective. So please like, share and subscribe to this channel and partner with us in prayer. And thank you for joining us and see you next week for the Q&A with the biblical perspective. Take care. God bless.